My name is Morris Vance. I am 67 years old, and the day we buried my wife of 41 years, I stood in the church hall holding a cup of tea I couldn't taste, listening to my son make arrangements he didn't think I could hear. Edith worked for 22 years as the administrator of Pinecrest Long-Term Care Home, a place about 20 minutes east of Ottawa. She loved that job the way some people love their children, completely, with a specific and non-negotiable loyalty. She remembered the name of every resident's grandchildren. She stayed late to sit with people who were frightened of the dark. She once spent 3 months fighting the provincial government over staffing ratios in a letter-writing campaign that filled 2 binders and eventually worked. She was meticulous and fair, and she had a kind of moral authority that made people want to live up to it. When she got sick last spring, I thought the cruelest thing about it was the waste. A woman with that much left to give, running out of time. I didn't know, standing in that church hall, that the illness wasn't the cruelest part at all. The reception was held in the church basement where we'd been married 41 years earlier. Someone had put lilies everywhere. I never liked lilies. Edith wouldn't have picked them either. She preferred the wild asters that grew along the back fence of our yard. But no one had asked me. My son and his wife had handled the arrangements. They'd done it efficiently, the way they tended to do things, quickly, without consulting, and without looking up. I'd been watching my son all morning without quite meaning to. I've always been that way. 40 years as an electrician teaches you to notice things that don't quite fit. A circuit that doesn't add up. A wire running where it shouldn't. My son moved through the room with a practiced gravity, his hand always finding the right shoulder to squeeze, his face calibrated to just the right depth of sorrow. He was good at it. I should have known something was wrong with how good he was. My daughter-in-law kept closer to me. She was attentive in the way of someone managing a task, filling my cup, steering me away from people who lingered too long, smoothing things over. She called me Dad in that particular tone of hers, soft and slightly urgent, that I'd always taken for genuine warmth. Near the end of the afternoon, a cousin I hadn't seen in years caught my son at the doorway with a long, tearful embrace. It trapped him there long enough that he forgot to keep his voice down. My daughter-in-law was beside him. "The estate lawyer reads the will Thursday," she said. "He has to sign before then." My son replied, his voice a low murmur. Then, more clearly, "He won't notice what he's signing. He's exhausted. Just let me handle it." I stood very still with my cup of tea and kept my eyes fixed on the photograph of Edith on the display table. Her face from 10 years ago, laughing at something I'd said. "Sign before Thursday, he won't notice." My phone buzzed at 4:15. I stepped outside into the cold October air to answer. The number was almost familiar, the main line at Pinecrest, but a different extension. "Morris." The voice was careful. "Dr. Audra Hennessy, Edith's physician colleague, the one who'd consulted at Pinecrest for years. I'd met her twice at staff events. She hadn't come to the reception. I'm sorry to call today of all days. I wouldn't, if it weren't critical. I found something in Edith's office. She left it for you. But Morris," a pause. "Please don't tell your son or his wife you're coming. Come to the home tonight after 9. Please." I looked through the glass door at my son, who had disentangled himself from my cousin and was checking his phone, his face briefly unguarded. "I'll be there," I said. The drive home was the kind of quiet that has weight to it. My son drove, his wife sat in front. I sat in the back, looking out at the flat gray sky over the river, trying to remember the last time I'd signed anything I'd actually read carefully. Edith and I had updated our wills 2 years ago. A simple arrangement, everything to the surviving spouse, then to our son. Our lawyer, Mr. Reeves, drove a decade-old Civic and kept photos of his grandchildren behind his desk. We'd signed at our kitchen table, and afterwards Edith had made coffee and Mr. Reeves had talked about his trout fishing. There was nothing complicated about any of it. So what was my son so anxious for me to sign before Thursday? Back at the house, my daughter-in-law made chamomile tea, which she knew perfectly well I didn't like. My son sat across from me at the kitchen table with a blue folder. "Dad." He pushed it toward me. "We've been going through Mom's files. There are some things that need to be resolved quickly, before the estate process gets complicated, and you're left dealing with it alone. This is a power of attorney, Gives Tamara and me the authority to manage the accounts, the house, the legal paperwork, just to take the burden off you. My daughter-in-law laid her hand over mine. Her hand was cool. You shouldn't have to deal with any of this right now. Let us carry it. I opened the folder. My reading glasses were in my other jacket. I squinted at the language. Full authority, liquidation of real property, authorization to transfer or sell the matrimonial home located at, and then our address. The house I'd built the back addition on myself, room by room, over 3 summers. You want to sell the house, I said. Not immediately, my daughter-in-law said, with the patient warmth of someone managing a slow child. But it's a lot for one person to maintain, Dad. And the market right now, you know what homes are going for. We could find you something more manageable. A condo, maybe. Ground floor. Your mother planted those rose bushes the year we moved in, I said. She pruned them every September. She said she'd be doing it when she was 80. My son exhaled slowly, Dad. It's about what's practical now. I looked at him for a long moment. He held my gaze steady, patient, almost kind. Give me tonight, I said. Let me sleep on it. A look passed between them, so brief that if I hadn't been watching for it, I would have missed it entirely. Then my son nodded. Of course, he said. One night, whatever you need. They didn't leave. My son said it didn't feel right, leaving me alone. My daughter-in-law offered to make dinner. I said I was going up to bed. I climbed the stairs heavily, making sure each step was audible. At 9:45, I laced my boots in the dark and went out through the mudroom door. Dr. Audra Hennessy met me at the side entrance of Pinecrest, wrapped in a down parka and holding a coffee she didn't offer to share. She looked like someone who had been carrying something heavy for a long time and was relieved to finally set it down. She brought me to Edith's office. Nothing had been moved. Her reading glasses sat folded on the corner of the desk. A photograph of the two of us at Lake Huron was still pinned to the corkboard, blurry, taken with one of those disposable cameras we'd used for a decade after our good one broke. I'd been laughing at something I couldn't remember anymore. Edith was looking at me instead of the lens. A sealed envelope sat on the desk. My name was on it in Edith's handwriting, careful, deliberate, but thinner than it used to be. The hand of someone conserving effort. A note was paperclipped to the outside. If I die before Morris sees this, please give it to him. Do not let our son be present. I found it 3 days ago, Dr. Audra said. She sat across from me. And then I heard what happened at the reception today. The business about documents. She looked at me steadily. I'm going to tell you what I know. Then there's someone else I need you to meet. 2 months before Edith died, she had come to this office and told Dr. Audra she believed she was being poisoned. She said it the way she said everything, with the measured tone of someone reporting a discrepancy in the accounts. She had noticed the pattern in her own symptoms. She had ruled out the obvious explanations. She had done the math. She had also discovered, by checking our shared RRSP statements online, that $163,000 had been withdrawn in irregular increments over 3 years. My son had signing authority on that account. I'd added him years ago when I found the online investment portal confusing. She had compared the signatures on the withdrawal requests to ones she knew were genuine. They didn't match. She had confronted him. She had given him a choice. Tell me himself and get help, or she would go to the police, he cried. He told her he had a gambling problem. Online sports betting, years of it. He said he owed money to people who weren't the patient type. He begged her for time. 6 weeks later, Edith started getting sick. She suspected immediately, Dr. Audra said. She insisted on a private toxicology screen, separate from her regular care. She asked me to receive the results directly. She said she was afraid of who might have access to her medical file through our son. Dr. Audra slid a report across the desk. I looked at numbers and chemical names that meant little to me, except for the summary paragraph at the bottom, written in plain language, because plain language was what the results required. Mercury, thallium, consistent with chronic low-dose exposure over 3 to 6 months. I sat with that for a moment. She believed the compounds were being added to her nightly herbal tea, Dr. Audra said. She'd made the same blend for years for her arthritis. She said she'd watched the kitchen being unsupervised and believed the additions were happening then. She paused. And she believed your daughter-in-law was doing the same to your morning orange juice. She'd been making it every day for months, fresh squeezed, made a point of it. I thought about the juice, the brightness of it, the way my daughter-in-law would set it down in front of me each morning and say, "Drink up, you need to keep your strength." I had thanked her every time. I had thought she was being kind. "She took a sample," I said slowly, "before she died." "She did something close to that," Dr. Audra said. "She called me from the hospital on the morning she was admitted for the last time. She asked me to call a man named Marlowe." Marlowe was not what I expected. He was around 50, wearing a jacket that had seen more long nights than he looked like he had. He had the kind of face that doesn't offer much. He shook my hand and didn't say he was sorry for my loss, which I appreciated more than I could explain. He opened a laptop. Surveillance footage from outside my house, taken from a parked car 3 weeks earlier. My daughter-in-law at a street corner 2 blocks away, a figure approaching her car, a small package changing hands in less than 4 seconds. "We had the substance tested," Marlowe said. "It matches the compounds in your wife's toxicology report." He showed me kitchen camera footage, placed, with Dr. Audra's help and at Edith's explicit instruction, in the smoke detector above the counter the week before Edith was admitted. My daughter-in-law, alone in the kitchen one Wednesday morning while I was apparently still asleep, adding a powder from a small dark vial to a glass of orange juice, taking her time, looking relaxed. She was humming. "There is also a recording," Marlowe said. He pressed play without preamble. My son's voice filled the small room. I won't transcribe it in full here. I find I still can't. But I heard him speak with a calm that was more frightening than anger would have been. About the house, about the RRSB withdrawals he'd need to cover, about Edith's life insurance policy through Pinecrest, which was substantial after 22 years of service. He talked about the power of attorney, what it would unlock, how once the estate was settled, the debts could be managed. My daughter-in-law's voice asked, "What about him?" My son said, "He's already showing it. It won't be long." I sat without moving for a while. Then I said, "What do I need to do?" Marlowe said, "Go back, be exactly what they think you are, and let them finish what they started, on camera, in front of witnesses, where no lawyer can call it a misunderstanding." He explained the plan the way a tradesman explains a job. Clean, no wasted words, a button camera on my collar, an earpiece, his team in a surveillance van on Elmwood Street, police in 2 unmarked cars around the corner. The moment the substance was added, they moved. Chain of custody clean, no room for argument. Dr. Audra walked me out into the cold. She held my arm at the door for a moment. "She knew you'd do it right," she said. "That's why she set it up this way." I thought about the envelope still in my coat pocket. I hadn't opened it yet. I was saving it. My son opened the door before I knocked. He'd been awake. The relief on his face when he saw me was wrong in a way I can't fully describe. The wrong texture, the wrong temperature. Not the relief of a worried son. The relief of someone whose plan has come back on track. I let my shoulders go. I let everything I was carrying show on my face, because most of it was real. I said I'd been walking, that I couldn't sleep, that I'd ended up sitting by the canal for a long time in the cold. I said he was right. I said I couldn't do any of it alone. He said, "I knew you'd come around, Dad." I told them I would sign. But first, just one thing, one dinner together, the 3 of us, before everything changed. I asked my daughter-in-law if she'd make the pot roast with the herb crust, the recipe she'd learned from Edith, the one Edith had made every Thanksgiving for 15 years. I said we'd need a specific type of Dijon mustard, old-fashioned, the kind they only carried at the specialty grocer on Wellington, across town, and a bottle of the Chilean red we'd been given at my retirement. I couldn't remember the label, but I'd know it when I saw it. The store would have it. My daughter-in-law looked at my son, a silent calculation. Then she smiled. "Of course," she said, "we'll go now." The moment their car turned off our street, I pressed the collar button twice. I sat in my recliner with my eyes closed and listened to the house. Small sounds, methodical, careful footsteps, the soft movement of equipment. Within the hour, the house was quiet again, but it was a different quiet now, watchful. When they came back with the mustard and the wine, I was where they'd left me, half asleep or close enough. We ate at the kitchen table, Edith's good plates, the candles we only lit at Christmas. My son told a story about a road trip we'd taken when he was 12, how we'd gotten lost somewhere north of Perry Sound and ended up eating gas station sandwiches on the shore of Georgian Bay, how Edith had declared it the best meal of the trip. The memory was real. I had lived it. I found I couldn't hate the telling of it, even sitting there knowing what I knew. After dinner, my son set the blue folder on the table. I reached for the pen. I stopped. Before I sign, I said, "Could I have a glass of juice?" My throat's dry. I looked at my daughter-in-law with the face of a man asking for nothing more than a kindness. "The way you make it." She always said yours was better than what she could manage at the end. She told me that. My daughter-in-law stood without hesitation. She went to the kitchen. I heard the oranges halved, the juicer running. Then a pause. I watched the doorway. She thought I wasn't watching. She reached into the pocket of her cardigan. The vial was small. Dark glass, a black cap. She held it over the glass and tapped it 3 times. She slipped it back into her pocket and stirred the juice with a small spoon. She brought it to the table with a warm, unhurried smile. I looked at the glass. I set down the pen. "I know what's in that vial," I said. The smile stayed on her face for exactly 1 second longer than it had any reason to. Then it didn't. My son started to say something. "Dad, you're confused, you're grieving," whatever line he'd prepared for this possibility. He stood up. He used the word paranoid. The front door opened. My daughter-in-law pressed herself against the counter and went very still. She was calculating even then. I could see it in her eyes, that cold, quick assessment of options. My son was louder. He lunged for the folder on the table, as if taking the papers back could undo what the camera in the smoke detector had already recorded. 2 officers reached him before he got there. Marlowe walked past all of it to the counter, bagged the juice glass with gloved hands, and found the vial in my daughter-in-law's pocket. He looked at me on his way out. "We have everything," he said. The trial ran through most of that winter. I attended every day I could bear to sit in that room. They had separate lawyers. They used them to dismantle each other. My son's lawyer argued that his wife had been the one to source the compounds, that she had researched the dosages, that she had been the one consumed by money. Her lawyer argued that my son had been in debt, had forged the signatures, had set the timeline and made the threats. They were each telling a version of the truth. Neither was telling all of it. The jury understood this well enough. Dr. Audra testified in a clear, unhurried voice and looked at no one but the jury. The kitchen camera footage played on a screen in the courtroom. The juror closest to me, a woman about Edith's age, with reading glasses on a beaded chain around her neck, put her hand flat against her collarbone when the vial appeared. I testified last. The defense lawyer asked whether grief might have affected my perceptions, whether a man of my age and emotional state could be considered fully reliable. I told him I had spent 40 years reading electrical schematics that most people couldn't parse. I told him my wife had been more precise than anyone I'd ever known, and that she had built this entire case with her own hands while she was dying. I looked at my son when I said it. He looked at the table. My son received 16 years. My daughter-in-law received 12. They would each serve a portion before parole eligibility, but they would serve. The clerk read the verdict in a flat, procedural voice, and the room shifted the way rooms do when something final and irrevocable happens inside them. Dr. Audra drove me home. The city was quiet, February quiet, that particular stillness of old snow under streetlights, the whole world muffled and still. She pulled into my driveway and left the engine running. After a moment, she said, "She knew you'd do it right. That's why she trusted you with it." I thought about the envelope. I had opened it in Edith's office that first night, after Marlowe had finished talking and the room had gone quiet. One sheet of paper, her careful, exhausted handwriting. "Morris, I know you'll want to forgive him. I know that's who you are. But please don't. Not yet. Not until you're safe. I love you. I'm sorry I couldn't find another way. Be smart. Be careful. Be the man I married." She was smarter than both of us put together, I said. Dr. Audra didn't argue. "I know, I told her that once. She said she learned it from you." I didn't believe that, but I kept it. I got out of the car. I walked up the path to the house that was still mine, the rose canes cut back for winter, the tomato stakes leaning against the south fence, waiting for a spring I was now going to see. Inside, I put the kettle on. Red rose, the kind Edith bought because her mother had always bought it. I sat at the kitchen table and let the house be quiet around me, in a way it hadn't been for a long time. What greed does to a person is a particular kind of damage. It starts somewhere small, maybe with a debt or a want that becomes a need, and then a certainty, and it eats outward until the people around you are no longer people. They become either obstacles or means to an end. My son had made that calculation quietly, over years, while I trusted him with everything I'd worked to build. I lost him twice, once when I learned what he had done, and once when I realized he had already been that person for years without my knowing. The second loss was harder. But Edith I found again, in the way she had fought for me, quietly, stubbornly, without asking for a single thing back, in the shaky handwriting on a sealed envelope, in the thermos she'd sent to a lab from a hospital bed she was never going to leave. She had been methodical and clear-eyed, and she had used every last thing she had to make sure I would still be here. That is the thing about 41 years with someone like her. You think you know exactly who they are, and then, when it counts the most, they show you they were something even more than that all along. I have been trying ever since to be worthy of it. Do you believe greed can truly hollow out a person until the people they once loved become nothing but a transaction? Have you ever been protected by someone you didn't know was protecting you? Tell me where you're watching from in the comments below. And if this story stayed with you, if you know what it means to be underestimated and still be standing at the end, hit that like and subscribe. There's more to come.